Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, beast mindset, changing that way of thinking into something positive and constructive, but more importantly, understanding the correlation between working and empowering the thought process of changing that work mentality, going to work for somebody, into entrepreneurship, taking your dreams and making them reality. But not just, but you're talking about different fields. So when you talk about that mindset and changing that mindset from becoming a 9 to 5 into entrepreneurships, there's different areas. One area in particular we're going to focus on is the medical field. Let's be more precise, the nursing field. Today on the show, we have a young lady that not only saw a need to rethink, reprogram, and reevaluate her position as it related to the healthcare industry, and decided to, you know what, I'm going to do something different. I'm not only going to change my mindset and become an entrepreneur, but I'm going to teach other people by coaching and providing a resource for these individuals. I'd like to welcome to the show from the award-winning podcast, Tina Baxter. And the name of the podcast, get this, make sure I got it right, Nurse Shark Academy Podcast. Did I get it right?
Yes, the Nurse Shark Academy show. Yes.
Okay. Tina, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's get down to it. Let's start back with who you are so the viewers can get a little insight. And we know you're from Manderson, Indiana. You should be sitting in this chair, but that's going to be another episode. So let's
Yes.
so let's tell the viewers a little bit about Tina real quick.
Okay, so I never actually started out wanting to be a nurse. My whole idea was I was going to be a physician. And not to say that physicians aren't great and wonderful. I work with them, right? And I
Hmm.
have a lot of physicians in my family. So it was sort of one of those, I'll just follow in tradition and become a physician. But when I got to school, I realized I wasn't happy. I didn't like it. I sat for the MCAT twice and could never make myself actually put the application in. I started having nightmares about it. Men in white coats chaining me to a desk and learning. So what happened is they took the fun out of it. So I needed a job really quick, as I was a fifth year senior at a very expensive private college. And my parents told me, you better figure something out. So I
Hmm.
got a job working as a certified nursing assistant. And because they would pay you as you learn. And I thought, if I want to go to medical school later, I can.
Right.
But while I was there, I watched what the nurses did. And I saw how the nurses were really there with the patient. And I realized that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the one holding the person's hand as they're taking their last breath. I wanted to be the one to talk to them and really understand, how did we get to where you are right now? And so I enjoyed doing that. And so I changed my major and I went and got my degree as a nursing student, as a BSM. So I ended up with a bachelor's degree in biology and a bachelor's degree in nursing, and started my first job as the uh, charge nurse on the psychiatric unit at Ball Memorial Hospital in Muncie,
Right. Right.
back when Ball Memorial had the psychiatry unit. And so I was there for almost 2 years and then got a promotion and came back to Anderson and went to St. John's. Back then it was St. John's, now St. Vincent's Anderson Regional. And so I learned a lot about leadership. And during that time, I learned to be um, the charge nurse, from there to supervisor, interim manager. The hospital did a really great job about teaching you about leadership and budgets and managing people and all of that. It was a really great time for me to learn. But during that time, I had started as a nursing student teaching CPR classes on the side. So I was a side hustler,
Right.
right? I didn't think about a business. I didn't know anything about business. I was just a side hustler. I would go to these teach these corporate classes. People would call me from corporations and say, "Hey, can you come in and teach the CPR class for us?" These medical offices. So that's what I did. Never thinking that it could ever be a business. It was just simply a way for a college student to make money, and I kept at it.
Let's go
So
back for a minute,
yeah.
Tina. Didn't mean to
Mhm.
cut you off. Let's go back for a minute. You're from Anderson, Indiana. For people that don't know the landscape, the geo playing field of the
Yes.
Indiana area, Anderson used to be a thriving community. And unfortunately, with economic collapse of the automotive industry, a lot of those towns almost become like a ghost town. Growing up in Anderson, you mentioned a key word. You mentioned wanting to change the narrative, so to speak,
Yes.
because you is your whole family involved in the medical and healthcare industry?
Well, there's a lot, there's a lot of them in my family. So I've got aunts that are nurses. I've got aunts and uncles and cousins that are physicians and
Mhm.
X-ray techs. So a lot of us, my parents are from Arkansas. So
Okay.
if you wanted to have a good life, you went into the medical field. Medical and teaching were the two things that you did back then. And so a lot of them became nurses and physicians. And I spent some time with them and watched how they lived. And I just saw how the doctors lived, and they had all the toys and had all the things to play with, but never had the time to do it.
Right.
And I just didn't want that lifestyle. So when I came to Indiana to go to school, I really wanted to focus on finding out one, who I was,
Mhm.
and then two, how do I help people at the very basic level? Because it's one thing to, to have the surgery after the damage is done, but let's understand how you got there,
Right.
how do you control your diabetes? How do you help with your blood pressure so that you don't have the stroke later on? If we can prevent those things, that's even better than having you later on have to be in the hospital. So I always looked at it that way. I was really early on looking at being a preventionist and wanted to help people understand how to take care of their health. And that's how I gravitated to nursing. And I'm very glad that I did. And so, mhm,
What did you see that was missing? Because here it is, and I share this with my daughter. This is her first
mhm,
year in school, and she's like, I want to do this, I want to do this. And I was like, well, spend your first year just getting acclimated with the college lifestyle because you might go and see something in the nursing field or whatever field, because she wants to get in the medical field that you think this is where you want to go, but you may not want to go that way. But you said you walked in, and after a while, this wasn't what you really wanted. What was it that really turned you? Was it the relationship, more so the relationship between the doctors and the nursing staff, or you just really being a caregiver saw that the doctors was only doing so much and these nurses was really pouring in a lot more than what the doctors were doing? The doctor was, okay, we're gonna do this and just walk out the door and leave everything else up to you guys.
for me, it was, um, let me explain. So, all through high school, I volunteered in the nursing home. I worked for the medical college in the lab. So, I'm very science focused in a lot of
Right,
things that I did. So, I did that for several summers. So I was exposed to a lot of different things. I went to the pathology lab and watched autopsies because we were students, so they allowed us to do these things. And originally, my idea was to become Dr. Quincy. Okay, I grew up watching TV, and I just wanted to be Quincy because he got to solve crimes and tell the story. And that's when I realized I like telling the story and understanding the backstory. But
right,
it didn't occur to me too much later that this is what drew me to what I'm doing now. And so for me, it was looking at those opportunities in front of me and just going and say, I'm gonna give that a try. And that's exactly what I did. They said, "Hey, you want to work in a lab? I'll give that a try." I was very good at it. In fact, my last summer working there, because they were so short staffed, they put me in the outpatient lab and gave me my own test to run. So I had my
wow,
own little niche because I've been there for 3 years.
Right.
And so the pathologist said, okay, you go ahead and look at these specimens and see if you see anything. And if you do, flag it, and then I'll go come and check. And
Wow.
yeah, I was right like 95% of the time.
Wow.
But I grew up, one of my first gifts that I remember from my parents for Christmas was a microscope. So I've had chemistry sets and microscopes. I'm a big nerd. I'm gonna tell you that right now. So my whole life was geared towards when my plan was to become a physician, right? And then I just realized this is not for me. I spent 2 weeks with my cousin. I love my cousin. Love you, cousin. But I watched him. He was a OBGYN, very busy practice in Arkansas. I had to spend 2 weeks with him. And this is where I knew OB was never going to be my calling because if you wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you better be having a baby. There's no Braxton Hicks with me. I don't have the patience. So I
Right.
knew OB was never going to be for me.
Right.
And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew what I didn't want to do.
Right.
And when I got my first job at the nursing home, and I saw what the nurses were able to do with the wound care and the treatment plans and all these things. I said, I think I can do that. I'm like, if she can do that, I know I can do that.
Mhm.
And so I just called them up 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the semester started because my lease was up. It's a whole, whole thing of how this happened. But I just called them and said, let me in. I seriously, I just said I need to get into school. My fiance is in Anderson. He says Anderson University has a school of nursing. I know that you're our rival sister school, to Taylor where I was going. So I said, I want to transfer. Let me in. That's exactly what I said. And they said, well, the semester starts in 3 weeks. You have to first get accepted to university, then get accepted to the School of Nursing. I'm like, done. Here's my transcripts. Let me in. And they did.
Wow.
That never happens, okay? I want students to know that plan ahead. This was God, okay?
Right.
Plan ahead. Don't just think you can knock on the door and walk into nursing school because it's very competitive. But in my naivete, I didn't know. I just thought if I wanted to go, it was going to happen, and I just said, "Let me in."
Okay.
And that's how I got into my BSN program because I had 2 classes left to finish for my bachelor's in biology.
Okay.
I had a math class and a Bible class to finish.
Okay.
So I went to AU, transferred those 2 credits back, got my degree in biology, and then the next year I graduated with my degree in nursing.
So you wind up getting your degree, but then
Yeah.
somewhere along the path, you saw two things, I guess, or several things. You saw, I guess I would call it undervalue in the nursing field. And
Yes.
I don't, tell me if I'm right or wrong, undervalued. Um, and a need to have them basically reevaluate what they were doing and to become more of an entrepreneur. Why did you feel a need for nurses to take charge and understand that they can be entrepreneurs in a field that is basically structured to follow guidelines and regulations?
Well, one of the things is you can be entrepreneurial even at your current job. This is something that I learned when I was working in management. Um, there was a need for our patients who were going through the pain management process. They were going to the pain management clinic. And there were gaps in the services. And one of the things we noticed is that they weren't making lifestyle changes to help further their pain goals. And the other thing is that they had a lot of depression, anxiety, et cetera, along with it. So
Mhm.
what we did is that with the pain clinic, the physical therapy department, and the psychiatry department, we got together and developed a program that was unique where you would come in for group sessions and you would talk to the physical therapist, you would talk to me in psychiatry, you would talk to the pain management nurses, and we would tailor make a program for you. And if you had to come to these sessions, we made it mandatory. And so then you started putting in those lifestyle changes. I wouldn't have had the wherewithal to do that had I not been working in the community
Mhm.
with a group called the Minority Health Coalition. And at that time, I was one of their educators as a
Right.
nurse out in the community teaching chronic disease management.
Right.
So I took what I learned from there to add that to that program, and it was very successful and was running really well up until when I left there, it was still going. And so I think that's important. You can be entrepreneurial even in your current situation. But what about if maybe you're a nurse or a tech and you're physically not able to work any longer at the
Right.
bedside? Because that happens. It doesn't mean you have to throw your whole career away.
Right.
I always tell nurses, leave your job, not your profession, right?
Right.
Find a way to do it differently that works for you. So that's the reason why I created the show, was because I wanted to bring on nurses from all over to tell us about what they're doing. So I've had nurses that are wellness and health coaches, a nurse that saw a problem in how nurses were scheduled for infusions. She did outpatient infusions. And so she developed her own company to do that so that the nurses would have a better quality of life, better scheduling, and it would be lucrative for her. And it was so good. She built that company up to where she was taking over the major region in her state, that now she's even sold the company, moved on to something else. So, yeah.
What are three of the top things that nurses really struggle with trying to elevate to that level? Because
Mhm.
you have traveling nurses, you have all kind of nurses, but y- I know depression hits
Yes.
everybody, but it definitely hits the nursing field and the medical field totally different because you're dealing with life. You're
Mhm.
getting close to these people. Now all of a sudden these people are stricken, stage 4 of this, and you're getting involved with the families. H- How do they get from what are three of the things that they share with you that they're really having a difficult time getting over the hump to even get to the part of saying, okay, I need to reevaluate and I need to take my craft and become an entrepreneurship, work smarter versus versus working stressfully.
Mhm. Well, one of the things is knowing that you have options.
Okay.
I can't tell you the number of nurses I've talked to that said nurses can own their own businesses. I'm like, absolutely. So knowing that, one, that's the biggest hurdle, is knowing that there are options out there. The
Hmm.
second hurdle is knowing how to get started and what you want to do. So a lot of the times they know what they're currently doing, right? Maybe working in med surge or working in ICU, but what does that translate? What do you like to do, right? What makes you excited? Is it teaching that cardiac patient on how to manage their health so that they're doing much better once they leave your ICU? Are you enjoying that? Because there's a lot of nurses that are doing that in the healthcare field. They're health educators and they have their own business for heart health. Or is it that you really enjoy working with the pediatric population? And so maybe you need to do something there. So discovering what it is that you like to do, or maybe it's something completely different and you want to develop, you like to cook and you want to develop recipes for heart patients so they have good, yummy food. And maybe you'll have a food truck or a restaurant down the road that has medically tailored meals. We don't know, right? And so that's that whole discovery process of what makes your heart sing.
But I
And then
think I think that
Mhm.
even covers the outside community as well. Because let's
Yes.
think about it for a minute. You know, we're we go to school and we're programmed to be laborers, but we're not programmed to understand entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
We get and I don't know how many individuals that I see that go to work and they rave over the money, but they hate their job. And
Right.
I'm like, well, what do you like about your job? To me, I'm like, if you don't like it, then you find something else. I get it that we live in I call it the creative fear factor, that
Mhm.
if I don't do this, if I don't make this, I don't have the big car, I don't have the big house. I'm thinking, okay, well, what about the people that still have this? They're still going to see people like you in the medical field because they're stressed out. They got time management is completely out of whack. They don't spend time with family and friends. And next thing you know, they developed all kind of unnecessary illnesses that are really, if you look at it, you're in the medical field, quote me if I'm
Yes.
wrong, a lot of the patients you probably see is stress induced that cause other things to happen in their bodies.
Yes, that's one of the reasons why I teach stress management sessions as part of my business as well. I do that, and I've seen it. And I say COVID was a very good example for us because it forced a lot of people to slow down and reevaluate what was important. Because if you remember the very beginning of the pandemic, Restaurants were closed, so we had to cook at home.
Yeah.
Um, the the grocery stores were practically bare. We were fighting over toilet paper.
Yeah.
Okay, hand sanitizer was a big issue. We couldn't find that. And so you really looked at what the basic necessities were. And then you had to, oh, wait a minute. I got to spend 24/7 with my family. So I better learn to love them, right?
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
lost that going into the office. And I think for nurses, just seeing, the patients come in, and I worked through the whole pandemic. We worked from home. I was in psychiatry. So we worked from home. So we were still seeing patients. We were still out there in the trenches. We were dealing with the patients that were struggling because now they're isolated and they don't have a lot of those connections that they did have. So we're still doing that while we're also dealing with our own isolation because we aren't talking to our colleagues. We aren't there. We're seeing them on tiny little screens, if at all. And at first, we were just on the telephone. And so, coming from all those different stresses, it opened up our eyes to say, wait a minute, something needs to change. And then with the nursing shortage, which really isn't a shortage, it's just we have enough nurses, just the nurses aren't willing to work in the conditions in which they're
Right.
find themselves. And so what we're saying is that no, something has to change in healthcare, and a lot of nurses are speaking up. They're taking to the picket lines. They're writing to their legislators. Kentucky just passed a law. I'm so proud of Kentucky. I'm like, what's wrong with you, Indiana? Catch up. But Kentucky just passed a law that protects nurses and healthcare workers from getting criminally prosecuted for, just making a medication error or mistake. That's
Wow.
huge because now we have to deal with possibly going to jail if you make a mistake. Now, we're not talking about the Lucy Ledbetters that are, doing stuff egregiously and purposely. We're talking about things that happen um, because you're distracted, because the system is set up against you. You're understaffed. And so now you're caring for more patients than really is safe. And instead of looking at the systemic issues, we're punishing the individual nurse.
Mhm.
And so those are some of the things. Kentucky just passed that law signed by the governor. I'm so thrilled. I'm like, Indiana, we need to step up our game. Kentucky's beating us on a lot of stuff. We need to
What do
step up
we
our
need
game.
to do as a patient? I remember going to the
Mhm,
doctor and I had a allergic reaction to hydrocorticosteroid that it eventually led to me having a stroke. And
mm,
I was a little upset about it because I had already contacted them the first time that they injected me with this substance. And I shared with them over the phone the complications, which were hiccups. And
mhm,
they kind of like brushed it all under the table. Well, I'm not in the medical. I'm a personal trainer. My degree is a lot different. Yeah, we kind of all sit in the classroom together, but we branch off on different areas.
right.
So I'm thinking, everything is cool. And I go back several months later, and my physician, my primary care doctor was like, hey, go see this guy again. And he gives me the injection, and I wasn't out of the office a good 40 minutes. And the hiccups come again. Long story short, uh, nobody addressed it until it was a stroke. And I remember going into his office as I was going for another appointment, and he just looked at me dumbfounded. But he knew because he said, "You're one of X amount that this happened to." But I looked at it like in my mind, like, dude, I notified you months ahead of time about this. So
Mhm,
what do we need to do? Because I see the bill passed to protect
mhm,
uh individuals. I know mistakes can be made, but that one mistake could have cost me my life. I couldn't, what if I had died and not been able to
mhm,
do that? What about the short-term memory loss that I wind up getting in the rehab? And I like the fact that you created a program that deals with the all the different areas that individuals go through, because that wasn't a plan that was set up for me. Like,
mhm,
nobody understood what that did to me emotionally, psychologically, financially, how it changed everything. Had your program been part of the medical field, it probably would have been a better outcome. What's your take on that with me as a consumer coming to the medical field and dealing with nurses and the medical staff?
I'm going to say this, sometimes you have to be your own advocate. And what I mean by that, I'm a nurse practitioner, but I had a situation to where I had an allergic reaction like you did to a medication. Fortunately, it wasn't that bad. But I started on this medication. It was a cream. It was brand new, new on the market. The doctor's all excited about it. Said this
Right.
should work. It's got three of the different ingredients that's going to help you with this because I have psoriasis. So I said, okay, I'm gonna try it. So I put it on my legs, and my legs started swelling and burning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the rash is getting worse. So I put more on it, thinking I need to help it. Long story short, it started moving up my legs,
Wow.
and then I realized I'm allergic to this medicine. Now, it took me a whole 2 weeks to figure this out. I'm putting it on, like you said, that I added some different stuff to try to help it. I realized I was allergic to it. So I stopped using it, got some Benadryl, took the Benadryl, and then I got some hydrocortisone, just plain hydrocortisone, and put it on my legs. That calmed things down because I knew I had an appointment the next week, and me being the stubborn nurse practitioner, yeah, I'm not going to ER for this. And so um, I went up there and I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm allergic to this medicine," and he's like, "Oh," he was almost ready to poo-poo it. I said, "No, look." I said, "You see how red? I still have the marks from my legs from where I had this reaction." And
Mhm.
I said, "This, I don't know what's in this medicine, but put it on
Right.
my allergy list because I can't take it. And I don't know if it's the combination of the medicine." So he put me back on the old medicine that I was on, and it worked out fine, and my
Mhm.
rash went away. And so I'd say that to people. Sometimes you have to be your own advocate, and if something's not working for you, you need to get a second opinion. Don't be
Okay.
afraid to get a second opinion. If you don't agree with me, and you want a second opinion, I will gladly refer you to someone. I have no problem with that. I'm like, sure, that's reasonable because my philosophy is that you need to make the best decision for you given all the information. And so maybe you need to talk to, so we have this sometimes patients don't want to talk to the nurse practitioner. They want to talk to the doctor.
Mhm.
I get that. All right. I'm going to set you up to go talk to the psychiatrist. More than likely, he's going to tell you the same thing I just told you because, I do my due diligence. But I let them have that consultation. If the psychiatrist says something differently, okay, fine. We'll go with his recommendation or her recommendation. I don't mind that.
How close are you related when it comes to providing information? If a client comes to you and stuff and you're dealing with doctors, how close are you with the same information to give back to the patient with the doctor?
Sometimes I'm the one because as a nurse practitioner, I can get spend a little bit more time with you. I'm the one who's sort of coordinating the care. So I had a patient brand new to me walk into the room and say, "You're giving me too much medicine." And I said, "I just met you. I haven't given you any medicine. What's going on?" And so she's in assisted living. She handed me the sheets from her assisted living. And I look at them and I see she's on several medications. A lot of them are duplicates. And so I said, "Well, who gave you all these medicines?" And she couldn't even tell me because she'd been in and out of the hospital. So she had like 4 or 5 different specialists. So I said, "Okay." I said, "Let's see if we can fix the problem." So I reached out to all of her doctors, asked them for all of her medical records, got all of her medical records in, spent an hour going through the medical records, making a chart for her so that I can say, okay, this is when this medicine started from this doctor. This is this medicine and this doctor, and this is what this is for. So you need to go back to this doctor and talk to him about this medicine and whether or not you still need to be on it. You need to go back to this doctor and talk about that. You need to go to your family doctor and say, "Hey, look at all of this and see what it is that I need to be on. What can I be taken off of?" And I said, "And this is what I'm going to give you for your depression. You got two medicines for me, one for depression, one for anxiety. That's it. This is why you're getting it, etc." So she was able to go back and take that list and talk to her doctors and get her medications reduced. And so it made her feel better. She wasn't as lethargic. She was doing a lot better. Again, I work with a lot of older adults And she thanked me. Her sister was there, thanked me profusely because what they came in and said, "You're giving me too much medicine." Now I coulda got upset about that,
Right, right.
but I
It-
didn't. I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. First of all, I just met you. I haven't given you anything yet, but let's see what you're on and what the problem is." And it's because I work in geriatrics and I understand, how overwhelmed sometimes it can be, particularly if you're getting something for your heart and then something for your diabetes, and then you've got high blood pressure. Oh, let's not forget your gout. Oh, then let's throw some depression on there. Why not? And so
right.
you can have 3 pages of meds like she did. We're able to get it whittled down, and for me, that's a win, right?
When you started your podcast,
Mhm.
what what made you actually do a podcast? Is this almost like an epidemic in the nursing field that the they're the silent voice. They're keeping everything internally. And was this the purpose for doing this podcast? And what's the success rate of it? You getting a lot of nurses coming and sharing their stories? And if so, what are two of the most powerful stories that were shared on your podcast that not only it was it powerful, but it's actually going on more than what people think?
Well, I think one of my most successful podcast interviews was during the first season,
Mhm,
and I happened to talk to a nurse, and she has a chronic illness, debilitating disease, but she was able to use her platform as a nurse to develop an online business for herself
mhm,
and to work with other nurses that are also having a chronic illness and debilitating disease, and where she's able on her good days to bring these nurses together, be supportive, help them get what they need. She runs educational seminars. She's doing great. And so it was wonderful to hear from her and work with her. And we still keep in touch, actually. We're trying to
mhm.
work on a project together. But then I say during the second season, we're in our second season, and we're now international. And I had a
Congratulations.
nurse. Yes, thank you.
Look, your face just lit up on that. We're now international.
Yes, because I had my very first nurse from the United Kingdom
Okay, yeah.
that was telling me about her concierge business where they bring in patients from all over the world. They pay for their surgery out of pocket, right?
Wow.
But it's a lot cheaper than getting your surgery here in the United States. It's minimally invasive, but they put you up in a hotel for 4 weeks. They have nurses assigned to you, take care of you the whole time you're there, make sure you're there for your post op appointment, then send you back home. While you're there, you can be a medical tourist and you can
Wow.
go visit the sites and do all the things that you can do while you're there. And I just thought that was such a unique business that I got a
Right.
chance to talk to her. I just talked to a nurse who's now based in Mexico, and
Right.
so I talked to a lot of expats as well, and who are in different parts of the world. So that's the fun thing is every time I get to talk to a nurse and find out what they're doing, even though they may be in similar fields like legal nurse consultant or health coach, they all have a unique story. And I
Right.
love hearing that unique story of how they got to where they are and where they're going. And it's so for me, it's just thrilling. And we're growing every day with our podcast. So I'm excited about that
Did
because
you
I want.
find now that you're international and
Mhm.
do you find that the threads are so deeply woven in the nursing community, whether you're in the United States, Mexico, or abroad, and you all have the same common denominator when you look at it. But since you've became overseas, what's so different about their the nurses abroad versus the nurses here in on stateside?
Well, let's look at Canada just let's stick with North America for a moment. So the Canadian system, healthcare system, is very different from our system, right?
Mhm.
They have sort of state sponsored healthcare, but the problems are unfortunately the same. I
Really?
cover this on my news show. So they're dealing with staffing shortages, much like we are. They're dealing with increased workplace violence, much like we are. So these things carry over. So there's like this universal experience,
Mhm.
whether you're in the NHS or in what in the UK or one of those other type of healthcare systems. There's still that universal experience that nurses have of being short staffed, underfunded, needing to fight for wage increases, all these different things. So there's been strikes. Nurses have been striking all over the world. It's not just the US. And I make sure I tell people that it's not just the US. It's in Ireland. It's in Australia. It's in India. Nurses went on strike in India, and because they went on strike, what did they do? The government there, the hospital administrators, they fired the director of nursing because the director of nursing he didn't prevent the strike from happening. It's those same things that we deal with in healthcare, whether you're in the UK, the United States, you're in India, you're in Australia. These are the same things, right? And
Hmm.
so we see that universally. But what I also see is that there are nurses that are looking around and saying, hey, wait a minute, I can do it better. And this goes back to our nurse pioneers like Florence Nightingale, which everybody knows. But my favorite nurse pioneer right now is Mary Seacole.
Okay. Why is
And
that?
Mary Seacole, if you haven't heard of her, she is from Jamaica. And she went to the UK to learn about nursing from Nightingale, wanted to be her and all this stuff. And that's just racism got in the way for a lot of stuff. But she learned enough to take it back to Jamaica and help them through a cholera epidemic. She helped them through the Crimean War. In fact, the soldiers, she went back to the battlefield, and she was so close to the battlefield, she was often putting her life in danger with
Mm,
her field hospital, while Nightingale's field hospital was a little further out, a little in the safer area. She was right there in the battlefield that the soldiers called her Mother Seacole. And there's
wow.
a whole big institute dedicated to her in the UK because they had forgotten about her
Mm,
and the impact that she made. And so, not to cast disparages against Flo. We all love Flo, right? But Mary Seacole was her contemporary, and she doesn't get enough press. But she was very entrepreneurial in what she did, that
mhm,
she saw a need, she went out there to meet the need. She made sure she talked to the commanders, and at first they didn't want her to, but she showed and demonstrated that she was able to make a difference. And so now later on, they had commissioned her, they sent her out. They're like, yes, we want you to go out because you're good to our soldiers, and they get better when they're in your care. And so she was very entrepreneurial. She owned her own business. She opened up her own hospital. She wrote her own memoir. She was well traveled. I want nurses to see someone like Mary Seacole and say, I can be the Mary Seacole of my day.
mm,
I can be the nurse that's well traveled. I can be the nurse that opens up a new unit. And so we have nurses that are innovators, they're inventors, they're
mhm.
developing new technology. I want nurses to see that you can be anything you want to be, and you can use all your nursing skills right there in your own business. And whether you're still working at the bedside, you can be entrepreneurial at the bedside. This is where nurses come up with, hey, this is a problem. We're having a trouble getting people out of bed, or this certain surgical stocking isn't working. We need something different. Nurses are very creative. We do these things naturally. We just don't take credit for what we do.
How can the viewers reach out to you, listen to your podcast, and get more information on you and your quest to empower women of the nursing field?
Yes. And I want to say not just women, because we have men too.
Oh,
And we
yeah, I
want to
forgot about
encourage them
that.
too.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Yes.
shedding the light on that.
Yes, yes. But I'm gonna say you can go to the Nurse Shark Academy .biz. That's my website. You can get a hold of our podcast there. Our blog is there as well. We also have um, training videos available to you should you want to invest in those. You can become a member. You become a member of the Nurse Shark Academy. You get the one-on-one coaching. You'll also get the group coaching and access to all the video archives and whatever else I decide to just throw out there and have for you, because I'm like, I want to love on members. So I want
Okay.
to give them everything in the kitchen sink if I want, they need to. And what's great about our membership, I don't hold you hostage. It's 6 months. You can renew at any time. And so that's what I want nurses to know, there's flexibility in anything and everything that you can do. And I just want to say, I don't just help nurses. I do help others in the healthcare field. I help massage therapists. I've helped social workers. But my love is going to be nurses because I'm a nurse myself. And when I told my family, I said, when I die, bury me in my white uniform or my white cap and put my Red Cross pin on me. That's how I want to be buried. I'm a nurse through and through.
Thank you so much for taking the time for coming on and sharing such a beautiful story of empowerment and giving back to the community and teaching individuals that no matter what, you can always keep your life moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.